Hi guys, welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. This is Adam, and tonight's presentation is going to be by David Alt on making pretty pictures from scientific data. And it's a good topic, but before we start, for our YouTube viewers, I just wanted to let you know that we do this live every Sunday, 9:30 Eastern Time. So if you do want to watch us live, you're welcome to go to the Astro Imaging channel's Google Plus page and follow us, and we'll get you in. That way you can see our videos as they come out. Otherwise, you could just subscribe to us on YouTube, and that'll get you in. But as for right now, I'm going to pass it right over to David, and he's going to start off.
Hi guys. So I'm going to be talking about, like Adam said, making pretty pictures from scientific data tonight. First thing I want to mention is that I'm not an expert. I've done this, on the side, and I've found some good links, and I'll point you to those and show you the processes that I use and that I do to make pictures out of this stuff. But this is not the end all be all, and certainly other people are going to know other things that I don't. And so if you have ideas that we can include in this talk, definitely jump in and we'll talk about them. So let's see. Screen share. So can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So there's quite a few sources available for scientific astronomical data. I've listed a few links here, and then I have a few more at the end of the presentation. I listed these up front because these are the ones that I've used a bit more than the others. There's the Sloan Digital Sky Survey, the Hubble Legacy Archive. There's all sorts of ESO data, which is multiple instruments. The Space Telescope Institute, there's Spitzer, Worldwide Telescope, WISE, all sorts of other things out there. You can also get data from local observatories. For example, there's a university here in the town that I live in, and I know the professor there and have helped them out, some of their image processing, so that they can take their data and post it on their website. And remember, whenever you're compiling data like this, definitely make sure to give the appropriate credit for where you got your data. So the first one I want to talk about is the Sloan Digital Sky Survey. So Sloan uses the Sloan filter set. These are wideband photometric filters. They're not RGB. They have steep cutoffs and very little overlap between filters. Anyone can access this data. It's a very easy to use interface, especially if you're doing any kind of mosaics. All the files download individually, and it can be a little cumbersome to do a big mosaic. But it's pretty easy to determine exactly what portion of the spectrum is captured in each image. So here's an example search. So I put in NG524 in the search field. What's circled in number 2 is the actual preview of the image, where they do a combination of the Sloan data filters into a preview there, and then there are download links below the each of the filters. For mosaics, it's a little more complicated. In the entry form, you put in the RIN DEC of the center of the field, what the actual field of view is, which is this image size, and what the pixel scale is. The default is 0.396, which is the actual image scale of their system. The results come in a table, and they have small little preview windows on the side. And then if you hit the download fits button, it'll just sit there and download however many things you have selected. The Hubble Legacy Archive is another really good one. Hubble uses a mix of wideband and narrowband filters with multiple different instruments. Again, anyone can access this data. It uses a cart system, just like shopping on Amazon or anything like that. At the end, once you have everything in your cart, when you download, it just puts it in one big compressed archive. There's extremely good documentation on their website. It's very easy to determine exactly what each file represents, what the filter is being used, what the imaging device is, and everything like that. They also have some pre-processed data that has mixed colors as well as raw calibrated data. So here's another search for NGC 524. There's a help button at the top. That's where you can get all sorts of information about what filters, what the bandwidth of those are. Number 2 is the actual file names that are going to be included, and it has all sorts of information encoded in that file name. 3 allows you to select all. That whole line is essentially the select filter. And 4 is adding everything to the cart. Down below all this stuff, down below your results, there's a bunch of information that describes what each column in this page represents as well. So once you have added everything into your cart, you can go through and select different items and then hit your fetch HLA data and it'll start downloading. Also, I provided another link here. This link will take you directly to the instrument documentation that tells you exactly what filter covers what part of the spectrum and what instrument and all that sort of stuff. So the ESO image archive is another one that's a mix of wideband and narrowband filters. This covers a whole bunch of different telescopes, the very large telescope, SIL, all sorts of things, different instruments, and in different telescope setups. You have to sign up for an account with this one, but it's free. Some data is actually locked for scientific research and publication, so whenever you get a result, you may not actually be able to access all the data in that result. I've had a few issues with the download tools here, and a lot of times I've had to resort to using a download script on a Linux machine. However, there is really good documentation of what each imaging system is and is capable of. So here's some results again. This is also for NGC 524. You can actually see what the category is, what the mode is, whether it's an image or it's a flat or things like that, what the filter is being used. And clicking on a column will take you to a section of the documentation describing what each of those means. So I threw this one in here because I know the professor that works here. This is a really good way to get data and actually help out the scientific community. Small observatories like this don't have a lot of funding, and so they end up actually using a lot of amateur equipment to do their research with. This particular picture was done while they're doing research on AGN, active galactic nuclei, that comprised all sorts of scopes, including Spitzer and Hubble. Okay, so before I go on, do we want to take any questions?
I haven't seen any questions yet, David.
Okay. So once you've got some of your raw data, it's really good if you can normalize it so that all the intensity levels are similar between each of your different filters. So this allows you to make it a little bit easier to blend and combine the different frames into a single color image. So for example, on the right, you can see these are 3 different filters of data on M57 coming from Hubble. And if I stretch them all the exact same amount, one is reasonable, one's a little bit dark, and one is, all white. So you need to normalize that data. PixInsight has a tool called Linear Fit that does this, but it can be done in most imaging programs. So because we're not dealing with RGB in most scientific research, we have to deal with how we convert that into an RGB picture. A lot of scientific data is going to be in Sloan filters, Johnson, Washington, Stromgren, and various IR and narrowband filters. If you've ever heard of this SHO combination method, this is where you're just simply taking narrowband data and you're replacing red with sulfur, green with hydrogen, blue with oxygen, or whatever combination you like. That way, you get a full RGB data with three different colors. Three actual representations of data in each of those colors. You can also approximate the spectra of typical RGB filters using overlaps of the spectra, and we can talk about this a little bit more. There are also subtractive methods. So, for example, if you have luminance and a V band and an R band filter, you can get kind of a pseudo blue channel by doing a subtraction. And there's really no right or wrong way to do this. It's just an RGB image. You're never going to get effectively what our eyes would see because our eyes aren't capable of seeing the color in most of these things anyway. So it's really just up to you however you present the data. So here's an example of channel substitution. Here I took the helium-2, nitrogen-2, and oxygen-3 data from Hubble, and I just combined it in different channels. So the first one is helium is red, nitrogen green, blue is O3. And I moved them around. The last one I blend a little bit of the helium and nitrogen for red, and green and blue gets just the O3 channel, and that gets a little closer to what an RGB camera would actually take. There's somewhat of a cyan color in the middle with red fringing. Any questions so far?
There haven't been. I do want to remind all the people out in the YouTube thing that you can post a question in Q&A, and we will get to your questions. We'll just call them right out to David. But go ahead, David.
All right. So you can also approximate an RGB from overlapping spectra. So here I've put in the red, green, blue from the Astrodon filters, as well as the UGRIZ filters from Sloan. And so you can kind of see how they overlap. You can see the light cyan color is the G filter, and that pretty much entirely covers the blue and green filters, which we'll talk about more later. And the R filter covers the entire spectrum of the red. The I and Z is kind of off the side of the normal spectrum, with a small overlap on the I filter. This one is the Johnson filter set. So you can kind of see the Johnson is a little bit wider band with more slope to it. The V band is primarily green, the B band is primarily blue, the R band is primarily red with some infrared component. So you can kind of start to see how we might take some portion of that and divide it among the different RGB colors to get data. The last one takes the Sloan filters versus the spectrum response of our cones in our eyes. So you can see there's a little bit of difference here versus the RGB filters that you get from many manufacturers. So that first graph shows that the Z filter has no overlap with any of the LRGB filters. So unless you're trying to really emphasize some infrared components, or you want to blend it differently, if you're just trying to make a pseudo RGB, you don't really need to include the Z filter. The G filter almost entirely overlaps with the blue and green spectra, and because the cutoffs are so steep, there's no way to really separate the two easily. So when we put them together, the colors are going to appear a little bit cyan instead of blue or green specifically. And since we rarely see green objects in astronomical scenes, we tend to, we can blend it with other colors using various methods to get a little bit closer to an RGB, pseudo RGB picture. So here I have a snapshot of the pixel math, as well as of some of the coefficients I've determined for different overlappings. I've included a spreadsheet that Adam posted on the on the Google Plus page. So you can actually look at how all these overlappings were calculated and everything. So one of the other things I like to do is called an average neutral blend or average neutral protection. It basically picks between the minimum of the green value and the average in the red and blue. So this is taken from PixInsight, the SCNR algorithm, which is a chromatic noise reduction algorithm for removing green from your DSLR images. Does this really well. But it's a pretty simple math function. It's just doing a minimum of green and the average of red and blue for each pixel. In addition to this min protection method, I typically blend it back in with some percentage of the original green data, because there is a little bit of green component there. You can duplicate this blend in Photoshop using 3 layers. In this case, the lower layer would be something like R, the next layer would be B, and you do a 50% normal blend between them. Then the upper layer would be green, and you do a darken blend between it and the lower layers, with the blend factor being equivalent to this alpha factor in this equation. So here's my favorite combination for Sloan filters. It uses just the G and the R data to approximate an RGB picture. I use a combination of the G and R from overlapping with Astrodon filters and with the human perception. So that's where all these weights come from. And then I use the average neutral blend on the green channel to bring some of the green out of the picture. So here you can see a few different results. The image on the left of the whirlpool has no average neutral blend, and then on the right it does. So you can see the kind of cyan color becomes a little bit more of a straight blue. Same here with the Cocoon Nebula. It's kind of cyan looking and then a slightly more blue. And the star trails and everything here in the lower galaxy, a little bit more blue there. So here's another 2-color blend. This is another one using just the Sloan R and G filters. Again, it's using the same average neutral blend, and here's a kind of simplified equation that got this, right? So the R channel goes to red. Green is a little bit of a blend between the red and green channels, and then you do this average neutral protection on it, and the blue channel is the straight G channel from the Sloan filters. Any questions yet, Adam?
Not yet.
All right. So another thing you can do is hue shifts. So if you're just straight blending your data, so here I took the data up from above, where I took the helium and nitrogen for the red, and green and blue both got the O3 channels, which gives you this kind of greenish cyan color in the middle of the ring. And then I used a curve to push the greens a little bit towards blue, and the pinkish colors a little towards a more of a true red. And so this gets you a little bit closer to what a well-balanced RGB result would be from a one-shot color camera. You can also combine different fields of view. You need to do 3 things in order to do this. You have to be able to align your data, match the intensities of it, again doing something like a linear fit, and you have to be able to create a mask for blending the 2 together. In this particular case, because the fields of view were so different between Hubble and, in this case, Spitzer data, I used the PixInsight Dynamic Align tool to map these 2. It does an actual surface projection of the data, so it can account for any kind of curvature of the lensing. And then the mask was created just by stretching the Hubble data so that most of the inner nebula was white. So when I go to blend the 2, you can actually see the results here on the bottom. So I have the outer halo from Spitzer, and then I have the inner data from Hubble mapped on top of that. So you can see kind of the results from that type of blending. So here's a couple other examples. This is from Southwestern University data using the Johnson V and R bands. That's M51 and M104. This is Sloan Digital Sky Survey data. The one on the left, M81 and M82, uses just the R and G filters. NGC 2903 uses the full set UGRIZ data. This is more Sloan Digital Sky Survey data, NGC 3628. I think I've heard it called the Hamburger Galaxy before. And oh, I got that labeled wrong. I think this is 5148 on the right. So here's some Hubble data. These are large mosaics. This is the Tadpole Galaxy, or ARP-188. This uses 3 different filters to create this. The filters in the Hubble data, you can see this is 483. That's the center of the filter. The W means that it's a wideband filter. So these are the different spectra it covers. Then a close-up crop of the center of that galaxy there. And some pictures of M51 zooming in on the center. And let me go ahead and move past here. So here's a few additional links. So the first one is another one to the ESO data. This is through the Digital Sky Survey, but it still accesses ESO data. The Misty Mountain Observatory is a private observatory, but they actually have made their data available for people to use. Worldwide Telescope also has some data available. Eric mentioned the NOAO. They have some data available, and WISE, so Eric provided these 2 links here. And Spitzer also has data available. I did find one book, but I didn't get this in before the presentation, so I didn't actually utilize this. But I'd seen this one out there about how amateurs can generate and use professional imaging data by Gerald Hubble. All right, so that's what I've got, Adam.
Thanks, David. I don't know if anybody out there has any questions. You guys are welcome to share them. Even the guys out on YouTube, again, Q&A, and you can get right in. Eric's asking, well, can you post these links? Eric, I posted the whole presentation on the event page for this Hangout. So if you look in the description, you'll see the whole presentation, and you should be able to get in there and just click the links. So you'll see them in there. That actually goes for anyone out there that's looking for these links and they want in quickly rather than having to try and fiddle with them from the presentation.
I kind of prepared if the presentation went pretty quick, which I think it did. We can do kind of an interactive session where we actually show some of the blending, so I can bring up PixInsight and show some of the steps I do if people are interested in that.
I'd definitely be interested in that.
Okay.
Yeah, anybody has any questions, they're welcome to call them out. David, you can pull it up if you'd like. We'll make sure we're seeing it the same screen as you. I noticed it was interesting on the Johnson filters, the transmission of the RGBs. They seem pretty low.
Yes, they are quite low, actually, and the B filter is extremely low.
Yeah.
That's a problem that they've actually had in that observatory, that their B data has to expose, something like 4 or 5 times longer than the RNG, the V and R data.
They should just get some astrodons.
I think they're working on that, but like I said, a lot of those observatories don't have a lot of funds, so it takes them a while to get there.
That's a shame. Big telescopes, but...
Okay.
All right. I see your screen, yes.
Okay. So here I have some of that Hubble data. So let me first bring up what the original data looked like, so we can see that. So when you download your data from Hubble, you'll get these FITS files in a zip file. So you decompress it first, and then you'll get this. I'm not sure what this one particular frame is, but you'll get 3 layers in each FITS file, depending on whether it's color or not. These are all grayscale, so I get 3. This one is essentially showing the tiling. It's kind of a pseudo flat frame showing how this was actually calibrated, but the data is calibrated, so you don't actually need to use it. There's one. This is you can see this is F658. So this is the helium-2 line narrowband filter. And this is 502, so this is O3. And this one isn't listed. Oh no, it is 469. So this is, I'm sorry, this is the helium-2. 658 is the nitrogen-2 line. So this is the data. When you look at it normally, it basically looks black. All the data is very, very low in the histogram. So if you look at it here, it's just all the way over on the right-hand side. So I've just used the screen transfer function tool to stretch it so it's visible. So all I've really done here is aligned the data and cropped out the center. And let's close these here. That's this data here. I've cleaned it up a little bit. There was some lines in between the different imaging chips on Hubble in the Wide Field Camera 3. You can actually see, if I really stretch this quite a bit, you can actually see some of the lines. See some gradations in between the different panels that got stitched together. So I'm just going to use pixel math. And so all this is saying is the helium-2 data is going to be red, the O3 data is going to be blue, and the helium-3 is going to be green, nitrogen-2 is going to be red. So when I create this image, I now get a full color RGB image where each of these channels is just mapped directly to a color channel. So now I'm going to do one that's a little more complex. Here I'm blending the nitrogen-2. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to you, we can't actually see the tool window that you're opening up.
Interesting.
From the last time we did PixInsight, so and you're probably in the pixel math window, which is impossible to explain specifically, but at least keep that in mind when you're presenting.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Let me see if I can see what you see. Yeah, you don't see any of that. Interesting. But this one is just doing a 50% blend of nitrogen-2 and helium-2 for the red channel. The blue channel gets straight O3, and the green channel gets a average neutral protection of the O3 and the blend of the helium-2 and nitrogen-2. So, and that's that result. So you can see the inner part is a little bit bluer with a more of a straight red on the outside. I'd really like to know how we can get that stuff to show up. That's interesting that it doesn't.
You can try full screen share full screen, and then just make your PixInsight window full screen. And I think that'll work.
Okay. Is that better? Can you see the pixel math now?
Now I don't see anything. Huh. No, I see a black screen. I see your mouse cursor going around it, but I see a black screen.
Let's try this again. Entire screen.
Yeah, just a black screen.
Huh. Okay, well, we'll go back to the other view anyway.
All right, now we see what we saw before.
Okay. So there's really nothing much more complex than this. Let me see if I can... No, it's just not going to show up. They must be doing something funny with the Qt renderer here.
Oh, now I see it.
I took a screenshot of that form and pasted it into the window. So that's the pixel math operation that generates. Oh, wrong one. This image. So here you can see that 50% blend on the nitrogen and helium, the straight O3 for the blue, and then I use this a blend between O3 and the minimum of O3 and a blending of the nitrogen, helium, and O3. And that gets me this slightly more RGB-like image out of this.
David, I'm going to ask a little bit different of a question.
Sure.
The one thing I've always noticed is with the mosaics that the lines going through them are crazy. How did you get rid of them? And that's probably a larger question than this presentation can handle. But is there a simple way to answer that?
But the best way is to make sure that the data is as close as possible, in terms of linear scale, right? So you want to make sure that the median of each of the background portions of the tiles are close, so that when you are combining them, they come together nicely. The other thing you can do, and these are actually pre-processed tiles. I do have some other ones that are mosaics, though. If I bring those up. Um, oh, that one's huge.
And Eric's asking if you have to register these images first.
So the Hubble data is typically pre-registered. So all I did for these was actually crop and rotate, so you can actually see that the data lines up almost perfectly. So the Hubble data, I didn't have to. The Sloan Digital Sky Survey data, I did. So here's actually a mosaic. So I took the data from the Sloan filter, Sloan Digital Sky Survey 3. Let me shrink these down. So you can see all the different quadrants here. So this is the G filter from Sloan, and what I've done is put it all together and registered it so that they don't, well, they do overlap some, but registered it together to one master frame. So PixInsight has a script called catalog star generator, So you can actually generate a synthetic star field on any image scale, and then you can register your data to that. Then in addition to that, I actually do a linear fit between the overlap of the images so that the backgrounds and the intensities all match. And then once I have everything in this form, then I can actually use the gradient merge mosaic, and this takes care of any gradients in between the different quadrants in this case, to blend it out a lot more smoothly. That's probably quite a bit to go through.
Yeah,
That probably needs
but
a whole separate tutorial.
yeah, but I guess with doesn't some of the Hubble data when you download it, it's already assembled, but it still has those lines through it?
It's true, and like I said, they are visible. I've reduced them some here by some pixel math operations, so to actually specific target different regions, and you can do this, also with the cosmetic correction, but I target a window of area where the overlap actually is. And let's see if I can. So you can see the change in the noise in between the two panels there. So it's
Yes.
still there, but I do a little bit of blurring effectively around that region to make the transition a little bit smoother. So you can see all the intensities are still a little bit different. I'd actually also change the intensities for each of these tiles. So the original data, let me bring one of those back up again. So if I crop this the same way I've got the other ones cropped, so I'll just get close. You can see that that upper left tile is much noisier and brighter than the others. So I actually just wrote a pixel math operation that says look for pixels in this window, from 0, 0 to whatever this coordinate is here where it changes, and actually multiply by 0.95 or something like that to bring the levels down.
Hmm. So it is a very manual process.
Yeah, it's pretty manual, especially when you're looking at this is what 16 tiles or something like that. It gets pretty painful. I haven't seen a great automated way to deal with mosaics like that.
Hmm. 16 tiles, that's insane.
Yeah, I think the M81 M82 tile image I did from the Sloan, I'm not sure, that one's a pretty big one as well. Let's see, I have 40 frames of just the green data. So that means it was a 40 tile mosaic for all different filters.
And this is the Hubble's wide field camera, right?
With that one, the one we're
Um,
looking at here with M57 is the Hubble wide field camera. The M81, M82 in the presentation was the Sloan Digital Sky Survey imaging system. I think it's a 60-inch scope up on some mountaintop. And I think they actually lock it down. They don't actually have it tracking. They actually have it locked down once they do the imaging, and they scan the chip out at the sidereal rate. So they're actually, moving the scan rather than moving the telescope
yeah.
to capture the data.
Huh. Very cool stuff. I mean, I can look at your screen and I can see the draw to using professional data to get your images because the detail in that ring nebula is insane.
Yeah, it's really amazing what you can get from some of those. I think if you look at the full completed version of the M81, M82. It's a 1 GB, over 1 GB image file. It's at almost 10K by 10K resolution, I think. Right. So, I mean, you can really zoom way in on these things and see massive amounts of detail in there. So it's pretty impressive being able to use that. And I think like Eric does as well, complement his own data using, data from WISE or things like that, right? That's a great way to do things as well. That way you're combining spectra that you can't capture along with your own data.
Well, recently I haven't been able to capture any spectra with the weather.
I understand.
Tonight's my clear night, and I don't think it's happening. It's like foggy out. But very cool stuff. Anyone else have any questions? I don't see anything in Q&A. Comments in general, anything to add?
Eric, did you have anything to add? I know you do a little bit of this stuff yourself.
I just unmuted my mic. I actually do things differently. I can't do what you've done there. But basically, I do color maps, my tone maps, and then the detail in the grayscale version from some of these telescope images just to bring out, a prettier image, I guess is the best way to say it, and a lot more detail. But I always try to have at least part of this as my data.
I see. So you're taking completed images from the show or things like that, and then tone mapping them?
Well, I do strictly tone mapping, starting out with HA and then doing the other two, and then do a tone map. Once I get the tone map and I get an image, say, from Hubble or from WISE or NOAA or wherever, I simply register the two images and then convert their image to a grayscale and use it as a luminosity layer on top of the tone map that I've generated previously.
I see.
And so if you look on AstroBenamite, you'll see a nice handful of those kinds of images. It's the kind of pictures we wish we could get if we had a really big telescope.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are doing that. Eric, I'm seeing feedback on your mic, so you might want to mute yourself while we're doing it, or whenever you're not talking, you might want to mute yourself. Sorry. Yeah, a lot of people are using pro data or professional observatory data to blend in with their own imaging. Like I said, with my weather, I can understand it, but at the same time, yeah, it gives you just great data to work with. And especially if you're using the luminosity, because then it's going to give you just awesome structure, and you're just relying on the RGB. I mean, the professional observatories are sharing it, so it's out there for you, for your taking. Anyone? I will remind all of our outside YouTube viewers. You can get in. You guys can come into our live sessions by joining us, joining our Google Plus page, and then you can pretty much get into the interactive Hangouts. At the same time, we do this every Sunday, 9:30. So you can either subscribe to our YouTube page or see us whenever. Yeah, Eric's saying with 6 weeks of clouds, that's all there is to do. That's been why I've been looking at it. Unfortunately, I've been having trouble getting computer time, so I've been sleeping a lot, trying to catch up on sleep, because I know this winter's going to break, and all of a sudden we're going to get weeks of clear sky. It has to at some point.
Yeah, that's another thing that working on this kind of data does for you. I mean, it really helps with your image processing capabilities. And at the end you get some really nice pictures out of it. So in your downtime you can still improved your skills in image processing with whatever program you're using using this kind of data.
Yeah, actually, especially if you're blending this data with your data, and you're able to kind of see what the really good pure data is. And of course, I'm saying this coming from somewhere. I actually haven't done this before. I've downloaded a few of the files, opened them up, and said, "Wow, this doesn't look as good as I was expecting," because it did. The mosaic panels, the odd interaction between them, kind of threw me. But yeah, it'll make you better at processing, just working through that. I've only processed the number of images I've taken, which is limited by my skies. Slightly over 200 images, I think. It's right around where I am. Did we get to Q&A about public domain? Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Out in Q&A, for some reason, my screen didn't light up. Is the Hubble data public domain, and any copyright issues to consider with the images you produce? I believe it is all public domain, and it's all for it's out there, so you could produce it. You just have to give credit to Hubble.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't think you can use it for resale, but otherwise it's free to use for whatever you want to do with it.
And I think this is a question from Charles Lilo. I think he says, are S2H alpha and O3 Sloan filters?
No, those are narrowband filters. The Sloan specific set of wideband filters used for photometric calculations.
All right, sorry I missed you guys. Usually my screen lights up and it says there's some questions coming out there. Thanks for reminding me, Alex. Guys out on YouTube, we're always looking for presenters. Anybody who has anything to, any topics they'd like to talk about is welcome to come in and just talk about whatever. Yeah, Eric's reiterating, all these sites basically have rules for using their data, but it's pretty much just giving them credit as they specify. I think we have, there's one of two presenters for next week, so I won't go into who they are, but I think we have a presenter for possibly next week and the following week, but I will try and work that out with them, and we're hoping to get a few other guys to discuss a few other topics. Won't go into names, won't call them out yet, but we're always interested in getting people on. I do want, first of all, anyone else has any questions for David now that those have been answered, call them out. I do want to thank David because that was a very nice presentation, stimulated by a post on cloudy nights, and it just kind of struck me and a few other people as actually Sean Harrison's post, who wasn't here. He processed a Hubble image, and it was really cool to see kind of unfold. It's kind of an early night for us. Weather Channel says it's clearing up here at midnight. I don't know if I believe them, but that's what they're saying. There's nothing else, then David, do you have anything else you want to say or go over?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, we could make it an early night. I do want to thank everyone out on YouTube for coming, and we'll be back next week. I'll post the topic as soon as I possibly can. But for now, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next week.